Before we dive into today's episode, I want to give a quick content warning. This episode includes discussions about suicide, racism, and SA. Some of what we'll talk about may be upsetting or triggering for certain listeners, so please take care of yourself while you are listening. If you or someone you know is struggling with thoughts of self-harm, you can reach out to the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by dialing 988 in the US. It is free, confidential, and available 24/7. And if you're a survivor of sexual assault or abuse and need support, you can contact the RAIN hotline at 1-800-656-HOPE or visit rainn.org for live chat options. Your mental health matters, and it's okay to step away if you need to. So now, let's get into it. Hey all, it is me, Joshua Robert, and this is Hot Air, the podcast where we don't just talk about the news, we dissect it, we challenge it, and sometimes we burn it down to the studs. Today's episode is a bit about faith, force, and false narratives. Before we get into it, make sure you're following on the gram and TikTok at _hotairpod. And you can send me your listener stories and topic suggestions for future episodes by visiting my website, hotairwithjoshuarobert.com. Head to the contact page and drop me a line. New episodes of Hot Air drop every Tuesday and Friday. And I know that I said I was going spooky season with October, and that will remain the case on Tuesdays. On Fridays, I'll continue with these LGBTQ plus news roundups. Should there be something important that I feel like we should be talking about? If there's listener stories that I also feel are timely, I'll be sharing those, or anything else that pops up that is time sensitive, then I will share that on Friday's episodes. But Tuesdays will remain spooky season. And one more thing before we get into it, I just received the samples of the Hot Air merch. I am wearing the t-shirt right now. If you are on YouTube, you can see the front of it. I'm leaning out of the way. It's so cute. So the front is a neon pink barbed wire heart designed by moi. The back has my favorite quote ever, which is, "I found your podcast to be egregious," which, you know what? Straight up, I don't give a fuck anymore. Somebody that was really close to me said that about my very first episode of the podcast, called it terrible and called it egregious. Quite literally said, I found your podcast to be egregious. I had to Google what egregious meant, and then I was like, what the fuck? You're telling me that my gay ass truth is egregious? And you know what you do when life gives you lemons? You make merch. So now you've got t-shirts, you've got hoodies, and you've got the cutest fucking mugs. I'm still waiting for my mug, but like the sample I've seen a picture of is so adorable. It's got the same logo, same design, same I found your podcast to be egregious on it. Anyway, blabbing on. They're available on my website, hotairwithjoshuarobert.com. So go pick up yours and support the show. So today we are diving into 3 stories that are heavy, that are urgent, and kind of impossible to ignore. We're going to start with the independent autopsy in the Trey Reed case, which I have touched on in a previous episode, but I'm going to do a little recap today. There's a bit more information. Then we're going to move into the decades-long legal campaign to dismantle marriage equality, which has been led by Liberty Counsel, a group I've also talked about in previous episodes, but we've got a little update. Then we're going to cap it all off with the fall of a pastor who acted as President Trump's spiritual advisor, and some shit went down with him. Not surprising. So buckle up because this gets messy. It's honest, it's insane, and yes, it's absolutely necessary. So let's hit it. Let's start with part 1, Trey Reed recap and what we know so far. Now, I want to talk about this case because it's been dominating social media. It is stirring outrage, and it's forcing us all, if you're aware of what's going on in the world, to confront some really uncomfortable truths about race, justice, and accountability in America. I'm talking about Trey Reed, a 21-year-old Black student at Delta State University in Cleveland, Mississippi. He was found hanging from a tree on campus on September 15th, 2025. I did a previous episode about it, but we've got a lot more to share. So, not even a month ago, really, this happened. Some may wonder why I've been speaking about this, as it doesn't directly affect the queer community, but I simply cannot ignore something like this just because it doesn't include somebody from the rainbow alphabet. And I'm a firm believer in standing with every group that is othered, that is marginalized, and that deserves to be seen as equal, and unfortunately is not. So racism falls right into being a gay ally. Those go hand in hand to me. I care equally about the both. So let's talk about the official ruling in this case, which was suicide. But the circumstances around his death have left his family, his community, and the nation demanding more answers, or answers at all, because there's not really many. There's conflicting reports, independent investigations, a firestorm of speculation that makes you wonder how much of the truth we're actually being told. So in just a second, we'll unpack the facts, the controversy, and the fight for justice in the Trey Reed case. If you have not heard my previous episode about Trey Reed, fear not, because we are going to recap it first. So, Trey was discovered in the early morning hours near the university's pickleball courts. A faculty member reportedly found him around 7 a.m., and law enforcement and university officials immediately ruled it a suicide, which always calls for speculation. They said that there were no signs of foul play, no struggles, no bruises beyond what might be consistent with a hanging. But here's the thing. The first information that the family received was that Trey had died in his dorm room. That discrepancy alone is enough to make any reasonable person pause. How do you get conflicting accounts about the location of death before anyone has even started investigating? Just that in and of itself is reason for concern. This is where the Reed family brought in civil rights attorney Ben Crump. If you've been following national cases around racial injustice, you know that Ben Crump doesn't take these cases lightly, nor should anybody. His involvement instantly elevated the case from a tragic death on campus to a national story about accountability, transparency, and whether justice is being done, or whether justice is even being attempted. Now, the official autopsy conducted by the Mississippi State Medical Examiner's Office ruled the death a suicide. According to the report, Trey had no broken bones, no marks suggesting physical assault, and no signs that someone else was involved. That should have technically been the end of it, right? Except for the fact that Trey's family was not satisfied, and rightfully so. They felt there was more to this story. They felt, given the history of racial violence in Mississippi, that a quick suicide ruling without a fully transparent investigation was not enough. And I agree. In the previous episode about Trey Reed, I talk about the history of racism, about how people used to be lynched, Black people used to be lynched, and it was just ruled a suicide and no one ever gave a damn about it. So of course people are going to react this way. So the family turned to an independent autopsy funded by Colin Kaepernick's Know Your Rights Camp Autopsy Initiative. This autopsy was conducted by Dr. Okoye. I really hope I'm saying that right. Trying. He is an expert pathologist known for his work in complex cases. The goal was to have an unbiased, thorough examination that could either confirm the official findings or bring new information to light. As of now, recording this episode, the results of that independent autopsy have not been publicly released. There's been chatter, there's been rumors and whispers that it could contradict the suicide ruling, but nothing concrete has come out yet. Nothing official. That uncertainty has only fueled public speculation and outrage. But in a moment, I've got some scoop for you. Since Trey's death, social media has been ablaze. I have seen this story, thank God, everywhere. People are drawing connections to the long, painful history of Mississippi and racial violence in America as a whole. Conversations about lynching, about campus safety, and the treatment of Black students at predominantly white institutions have dominated timelines, including mine. And some of the comments I received are wild, but they show you how much we need to care about this because there's a lot of people that don't. Vigils have been held and petitions circulated, all demanding a deeper, transparent investigation. Agreed. Trey's story has become a flashpoint, and national civil rights organizations like the NAACP are calling for a federal investigation. Even members of Congress, including Representative Benny Thompson, have stepped in, insisting that no stone be left unturned. Let's pause there for a moment and think about what this means. Trey Reed was just 21 years old, so young, a student trying to navigate life, navigate education, navigate the challenges of being a young Black man in Mississippi. I cannot even imagine. His death has forced his community and now the entire nation to confront uncomfortable questions. How thorough are our investigations when a Black life is at stake? How much do we rely on initial reports without demanding independent verification? And how much does history play a role in the skepticism of families and communities that are seeking answers? All questions that I have no answers to, but questions we should keep asking. And one of the most heartbreaking aspects of this case is the uncertainty. Trey's family has had to grapple not just with the death itself, but with the way that it has been handled. There's a constant tension between trusting the system and then questioning it. And this is where public advocacy, independent oversight, and legal intervention come into play. The independent autopsy is expected to provide clarity, but until it's released, speculation is only going to grow. And on that note, I have found some very interesting, I'm going to call them facts because they were slightly reported on, facts that we should really be talking more about. And these are new details that come from activists, from family advocates, and community investigators that are raising suspicions as the family waits for the results of the independent autopsy. And perhaps they have received it by now, but these are things that are kind of leaking out. And a lot of this is according to reporting from the Chicago Crusader. So I'm just going to go through bullet point some of these. Why the whole reason I actually brought this story back up was because I saw a post on social media about this, about these new findings. So a second autopsy reportedly shows that blunt force trauma to the back of Trey Reed's head that was not reported in the first autopsy that was done by the county. So just that in and of itself, not matching up. Trey was also found partially hanging from a belt that was not his. They said it was too large of a belt for his waist, with no marks or injuries on his neck that were consistent with hanging yourself. Delta State University officials lied to his mother, initially telling him that he died in his dorm. They also misrepresented what clothes he was wearing when he was found. And perhaps they did this because that's got to be something really hard to just tell a Black woman that their Black son was found hanging from a tree, essentially lynched. But like, you need facts in this case. You have to tell the truth. I find this next detail very interesting, but the spot where he was discovered is well known for being one of the only areas on campus that has no cameras. And students use this as a place to hang out and drink and smoke. How fucking convenient. That's a tale as old as time in any true crime documentary. There's no cameras. Trey's phone was not returned to his family as evidence, yet its GPS showed that it had been moving around. Granted, this could be in transporting his body if his phone was on him or transporting other evidence, but showing that it was moving around, I guess it depends on how much it was moving around the time of his death, before his death, and after. A suspicious text that read, "The buckle broke," was sent from his phone. I don't know who it was sent to. Well, this is raising questions about whether this was staged or not. And days before his death, Trey had reportedly gotten into an altercation with a group of white students after Trey was defending a Black classmate who was attacked online for criticizing Charlie Kirk. Civil rights leader Jeremy Markell Bridges told the Crusader that neither the facts nor the evidence support suicide. Instead, he believes that Trey may have been killed elsewhere and then hung in the tree. And Trey is at least the fourth publicly reported case of a black man found hanging from a tree in the last year alone. Beyond the facts of this case and what I had mentioned, those are not facts. Those have not been like widely reported on, just something that I've read a bit about. There's also the national conversation that this whole case is sparking, right? People are talking about mental health if he did commit suicide, the pressures that black students face in these predominantly white institutions, and how those pressures are often overlooked until it is too late. Some are asking if Trey Reed's death was preventable or if systemic neglect played a role. Others are calling for sweeping reforms to ensure that students are safe, supported, and fully protected both physically and emotionally on campus. And make no mistake, the fight for justice here is ongoing. Trey's family, their legal team, and supporters across the country are committed to uncovering the truth. They are demanding transparency, accountability, and a full accounting of the circumstances that led to Trey's death. There has to be, even though there's no cameras there where his body was found, where was he before? Who was around? Like, we've all seen that show where they just follow people around on the cameras. Well, maybe we all haven't seen it, but there's a true crime show where they track someone's movements based on cameras from shops, from gas stations, from schools, from random buildings. Like, it's not that complicated to figure out what went down. And maybe this also means pressuring law enforcement, pushing for the independent autopsy results to be released, or advocating for policy changes on campus. This case is not going anywhere anytime soon, nor should it until we have all the facts. So, what's next? The independent autopsy is expected to provide critical insights. The community will continue to demand a federal investigation, and the story of Trey Reed will continue to serve as a lens through which we examine race, justice, and the value of Black lives in America. One thing is very clear. The fight for the truth and accountability is far from over, and the eyes of the nation remain on Delta State University. And I will be sure to keep you updated on future episodes as I learn more about what exactly happened to Trey Reed. And I do hope that we get some solid information and justice should it be needed. We're going to move right along to our second news story / crazy shit that you need to know about, even though it absolutely sucks. This is a topic that has been at the forefront of legal and cultural debates for nearly a decade. And that is the battle over marriage equality in the United States, something you have heard me talk about at length. Specifically, we're going to examine the role of Liberty Counsel, a conservative legal organization, and its relentless campaign to overturn the landmark Supreme Court decision in Obergefell v. Hodges, which legalized same-sex marriage nationwide in 2015. I have seen an increasing number of news stories about their push very recently to overturn same-sex marriage and how they have been playing the long game for years and years and years. So I figured I would look into it a little bit more. I could honestly probably do an entire episode about this, but this is also kind of time sensitive. So to understand the full scope of this campaign, we need to start at the beginning. We're going back to 1989. Attorneys Matthew Staver and Anita L. Staver founded Liberty Counsel with the mission to advance religious freedom, the sanctity of human life, and the traditional family through litigation and education. Over the years, the organization has become a prominent player in conservative legal circles, often aligning itself with efforts to challenge LGBTQ+ rights. The turning point came in 2015 with the Supreme Court's decision in Obergefell v. Hodges, which ruled that same-sex marriage is a constitutional right under the 14th Amendment. This decision was hailed as a historic victory for LGBTQ+ rights, but for Liberty Counsel, it marked the beginning of an ongoing battle to reverse the ruling. And let's just assume a decade ago is when they started planning to reverse this shit. In the years following Obergefell, Liberty Counsel intensified its efforts to challenge marriage equality. One of the most notable cases involved Kim Davis, a Kentucky county clerk who I have mentioned many a time and made many a reel on Instagram and TikTok about her. And, it's one of my most popular reels, but not because anyone really likes her. Kim Davis refused to issue marriage licenses to same sex couples, and she cited her religious beliefs for denying those marriage licenses. Davis was subsequently jailed for contempt of court, and Liberty Counsel took up her defense, arguing that her First Amendment rights were violated. And this is where I get so confused because I'm like, church and state are separate. So, like, why are we challenging a law and a ruling based around your religion that not everybody follows? It's just like, come on, just like go read your Bible. So in 2025, Liberty Counsel filed a petition with the U.S. Supreme Court requesting that the court overturn Obergefell. The organization argued that the decision was a legal fiction and that marriage policy should be returned to individual states. They contended that the ruling infringed upon religious freedoms and that the federal government should not dictate marriage laws. But that makes no sense because then the federal government is dictating marriage laws by overturning it or what. It makes no sense. It doesn't, to me, anyway. This petition was part of a much broader strategy by Liberty Counsel and allied conservative groups to dismantle marriage equality altogether. At the state level, several legislatures introduced resolutions urging the Supreme Court to overturn Obergefell. These resolutions, while they're non-binding, signaled a coordinated effort to challenge the legitimacy of same-sex marriage. Now, the kind of positive part here is despite these efforts, public opinion has largely remained in favor of marriage equality. Support for same-sex marriage has steadily increased over the years, reaching 70% in 2025. However, conservative legal organizations like Liberty Counsel continue to press their case, viewing the issue as a pivotal battleground in the broader culture war. So, what does this all mean for the future of marriage equality in the United States? While the Supreme Court has not yet agreed to hear Liberty Counsel's petition, from what I can tell, they're going to be deciding whether or not they're going to hear the case in the coming weeks. It was supposed to be in September when they were going to decide, is what I had heard and read, but nothing so far. And that's why I felt the need to share this with you, just in case you're not aware, and I feel like we should all be aware. So the mere fact that such a petition exists underscores the ongoing challenges faced by the LGBTQ plus community. It serves as a reminder that rights once thought secure can be subject to legal and political battles. And one of the justices, I can see his face. Why can't I remember his name? What is his name? Justice Clarence Thomas. Aha. Clarence Thomas, one of the justices of the Supreme Court, said that nothing is actually final. Whatever the Supreme Court rules on is not final. That decision is not set in stone. He outright said that. And we know that he wants to overturn same-sex marriage. He's also outright said that. So as we continue to navigate these complex issues, it's very crucial that we stay informed and engaged. The fight for marriage equality is not just about legal victories. It's about ensuring that all individuals, regardless of their sexual orientation, are afforded the same rights and dignity. And if you have not listened to my previous episode with Kim and Tammy, they were two of the plaintiffs in Obergefell v. Hodges, and I was so honored to speak to them. They fought for my right and your right, if you're listening and you're queer or part of the rainbow alphabet, LGBTQ+, all the things, for you to get married and have that right. They were a part of that monumental moment. And so if you want more insight on their background and how that all came to be, definitely go listen to that episode. It's one of my favorites. Now we're going to cap this all off with news story number 3. Something that isn't necessarily affecting the LGBTQ plus community, again, but it's something that I like to highlight because the people that are often coming for us and continue to attack us and say that the gays are groomers and trans people are violent terrorists, well, it appears, not shockingly so, that the call is indeed coming from inside the house. The call is coming from inside the house. The people that point the fingers are often the ones that are guilty. So this case, just this week, has completely shook the foundations of both the religious and political communities. The conviction of Robert Morris on charges of child sexual abuse. He's the former pastor of Gateway Church in Texas and the former spiritual advisor to President Donald Trump. Insert my imaginary shock face here. This case is not just about the actions of one individual. It's about the abuse of power, the exploitation of trust, and the failure of institutions to protect the vulnerable. I feel like everything I'm saying today is like a tale as old as time. Like, come on. It's a story that spans decades, crosses state lines, and involves a man who once stood at the intersection of religion and politics. Let's begin with the facts, shall we? Because a lot of people like to ignore those nowadays, but I love them. Robert Preston Morris was born on July 29th, 1961. And that is my birthday as well. How gross. Not the year, but the date. He was born in Marshall, Texas. He founded Gateway Church in Southlake, Texas in the year 2000, growing it into one of the largest megachurches in the country. And I'm sure he really enjoyed not paying taxes. Morris was known for his charismatic leadership and his close ties to political figures, including his role as a spiritual advisor to Donald Trump during his presidency. Trump really does love to surround himself with absolute motherfucking creeps. In June 2024, Morris resigned from his position as senior pastor after allegations surfaced that he had sexually abused a 12-year-old girl in the 1980s. The victim, identified as Cindy Clemishier, claimed that the abuse began in 1982 when she was 12 years old and continued for 4 years. Clemishier stated that Morris, then a 21-year-old traveling evangelist, abused her in both Oklahoma and Texas. In March 2025, Morris was indicted in Oklahoma on 5 felony counts of lewd or indecent acts with a child. The charges stemmed from incidents that occurred between 1982 and 1986. And you might be wondering, that's a long time ago, so how did they charge him? So under Oklahoma's law, the statute of limitations does not apply if the defendant was not a resident of that state at the time of the alleged offense, which applies to this case. On October 2nd, 2025, just last week, Morris pleaded guilty to all 5 charges. As part of a plea agreement, he was sentenced to a 10-year prison term with 6 months to be served in county jail, and the remainder suspended. Yes, suspended. So he is serving 6 months for what he did to that girl, now woman. He was also ordered to register as a sex offender and to pay $250,000 in restitution to the victim, which, again, I'm sure that he has because he was running the biggest church and churches don't pay taxes, so I'm sure he also has a fucking yacht. The case has sparked widespread outrage and condemnation. Critics argue that Morris exploited his position of power and influence to prey on a vulnerable child. No shit. They also point to the failure of religious and political institutions to hold him accountable sooner. Also, no shit. Cindy Clemishier has expressed hope that her decision to come forward will encourage other survivors of sexual abuse to speak out. She has also filed a civil lawsuit against Morris and Gateway Church, alleging that the church failed to take appropriate action when the abuse was first reported. And girl, I am rooting for you. This case raises important questions about accountability, transparency, and the responsibility of institutions to protect those in their care. It also highlights the need for continued vigilance in the fight against sexual abuse and exploitation. As we reflect on this case, it's crucial to remember the importance of believing and supporting survivors, advocating for justice, and ensuring that such abuses of power are not tolerated. And that, my friends, is a wrap on today's episode of Hot Air. That was heavy. I didn't really realize those 3 stories together were going to be so heavy. I'm exhausted, quite frankly. We've covered some heavy, important ground, and if you're still with me, thank you for sticking through it. Today, we explored the tragic and complicated case of Trey Reed, a young Black student whose death has sparked national outrage. We took a deep dive into Liberty Counsel's years-long crusade to dismantle marriage equality, and we'll wait to see what the Supreme Court has decided, whether or not they're going to revisit marriage equality. I'm guessing that they will. And finally, we examined the shocking conviction of Robert Morris, former pastor and spiritual advisor to Donald Trump, who exploited his position of power to abuse a minor. If there is one takeaway from today, it's this. Whether it's the fight for justice in a single tragic death, the ongoing struggle to protect civil rights, or confronting abuse within powerful institutions, we must stay informed. And that's why I chose to do this episode today. Stay vigilant and keep asking the hard questions. The work doesn't stop just because the headlines fade or we get distracted by the next big thing. So thank you for joining me today on Hot Air. Remember, new episodes drop every Tuesday and Friday, so make sure you follow on Instagram and TikTok to stay in the know @_hotairpod. Submit your listener stories and topic suggestions on my website, hotairwithjoshuarobert.com. And on my website, you can also check out the new merch, t-shirts, hoodies, and a cute-ass mug that I can't wait to drink out of. So until next time, keep questioning, keep challenging, and keep seeking the truth, because it matters now more than ever. And I'll be back next Tuesday with a spooky season episode and a very special giveaway that you are not going to want to miss if you're in the San Diego area. So happy Friday. Have a great weekend. Hopefully this didn't tear you down too much. Let's remain positive, and I will see you next Tuesday.